this potato head story is tragic to me, right? It is going to be. It's going to start. I'm telling you. Next thing you know, it's going to be Buzz. It's going to be Buzz. Then Woody. Then the dog Slinky. So last week, Hasbro made news when they announced that they will be dropping the Mister from Mr. Potato Head, right? But it seems that they have, I don't know, maybe rethought their position because they released a statement that said, it was a tweet later that said, while it was announced today that the Potato Head brand name and logo are dropping the Mister, I am proud to confirm that Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head aren't going anywhere and will remain Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head, the company tweeted, right? So the tweet came after news of the brand name change exploded on Twitter with people asking if Barbie will change her name next. And so what they're trying to do is Hasbro, they're trying to appeal to this whole trans movement and, there's no real genders and, call me they, them and I stuff. And that's what Hasbro is trying to do. Once again, when companies get woke and they try to appeal to racial justice, LGBTQ movement, they're not doing it because they actually have a heart or they care about these communities. This is all for profit. They know that that people now and certain people now care about the morals of the companies that they do business with. And so what these companies are doing when they make these announcements or change to things, they're just trying to signal to people, hey, we care about these issues. We stand with you. Come buy our products. That's all that's going. That is all that is going on right now. That's all that's going on. Okay, but I wanted to make this video to discuss the culture wars and why I think people like myself, sane, I'm part of the sane crowd, people who are conservative, I think we really have to start taking the culture war a lot more seriously than we were maybe even, I would say 5 or 10 years ago, right? Because these groups, especially the LGBTQ activists, they are very, very effective and very, very good at what they're doing, which is slowly chipping away at kind of the bedrock of, sanity. So I never had a Mr. Potato Head, myself, but I always wanted one because of Toy Story. And so, you watch Toy Story, you see Mr. Potato Head, and then later on you see Mrs. Potato Head, and it's a Potato Head family, and you can take the nose off, the ears off, and you can put them where you want to put them. And it was just a really, cool toy, very simple, but a cool toy nonetheless. And so Mr. Potato Head is not just like your average toy. It's a toy that means something in an American context. The fact that these activists were able to get Hasbro to move away from the Mr. and the Mrs. and into this gender neutral stuff is a flex of their power, right? Now, I don't even think they're making new dolls for the potato heads because to be gender neutral or non-binary, Mr. Potato Head is going to look like Mr. Potato Head. He's just not going to be called Mr. Potato Head. And the same thing is going to be true for Mrs. Potato Head. I'm pretty sure. Or they're going to release a potato head with all of the parts that you can put on your potato head. And this stuff has damning consequences for us. These are the same people that are pushing, calling an individual person they or them because they don't identify as he or she, even though they look like a he or a she. If you look like a woman, you should be referred to as a she. If you look like a man, you should be referred to as a he, right? And the common pushback is, well, cruel. I mean, come on, man. What's the big deal? If someone who is non-binary wants you to refer to them as they or them, then what's the problem? The problem is these categories were created so that we can have dialogue where we agree on kind of the same thing, right? So how could we possibly have a conversation if we can't even agree that people fall under the he category or they fall under the she category? You can't have they, right? And matter of fact, there's more than just he, she, and they. There's, gender pronouns list. I think Facebook has the longest one. Okay, so this is the list. Agender, androgynous, bigender, cis female, cis male, cis man, cis woman, cisgender female, cisgender male, cisgender man, cisgender woman, female to male, FTM, gender fluid, gender nonconforming, gender questioning, gender variant, gender queer, intersex, male to female, MTF, neither neither new choice, non-binary, other, pangender, trans female, trans male, trans man, trans person, trans woman, trans star female, trans male, trans star man, trans star person, trans star woman, trans feminine, transgender female, transgender male, transgender man, transgender person, transgender woman, trans masculine, transsexual female, transsexual male, transsexual man, transsexual person, transsexual woman, two-spirit. And this is why we have to push back on this. All of these categories are unnecessary. You know why? Because we agreed to have two to help us make sense of the world. Once you begin to open the floodgates, it started with he, she, then it was they, then it was transgender. Now we have two-spirit. People identifying as a two-spirit. And it's us bound down to the crazies. Because I'm telling you, there's a correlation between, and people don't want to say this, there is a correlation between the trans movement and people who have, severe mental health issues that no one wants to talk about. So everyone wants to pretend like they don't know what's going on, but you can only believe that you're a two-spirit gender if you have a mental illness. That's the only way you can believe this stuff, is if you have a mental illness. And so back to the culture war, they are moving society along to the point where now it is common to see people list their pronouns on their Twitter, on their Clubhouse, he, him, she, her. We weren't doing that 10 years ago, right? And so even if the simple act of putting my pronouns in my social media bio is not that problematic, the point is they're trying to get us to a final destination. The final destination is the elimination of he, she, male, female, sex, gender, and sex, right? Because that's another thing. They keep drawing this distinction saying, no. Gender is a social construct, sex is real. They're trying to get rid of both. Right? They believe that nothing is real, that people should be able to identify however they want to identify, okay? And that's why they're pushing all of this stuff. And we're here laughing and making jokes about Mr. Potato Head no longer being Mr. Potato Head. Meanwhile, that shows power. It shows power. They were able to bend a corporation to pretty much almost self-sabotage their own toy company before they pulled this little maneuver where they said, oh no, we're not really changing the pronouns. Not really. They're still going to be selling them. We're just not going to advertise them as Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head, right? And so before the company realized, oh my God, we pretty much just shot ourselves in the foot by disrespecting our conservative customers, right? They got them to bend the knee. And that's what they're good at, the LGBTQIA activists. They're good at getting people to bend the knee to their ideology. And while we are not taking it serious, they're putting in work. This stuff is now in schools. You're hearing Joe Biden use the word equity instead of equality. That's how far this stuff has gotten. It's like we're in a pot of boiling water and they're just turning up little by little, cooking our asses. And we're just, come on, man. So this Potato Head story is tragic to me, right? It's going to start, I'm telling you, next thing you know, it's going to be Buzz. It's going to be Buzz. Then Woody. Then the dog Slinky. This is just not going to end well. So we have to push back on this stuff. You have to be pro categories, pro the binary. Yes. And by the way, just because you're a woman doesn't mean that you have to act girly. You could be a woman who doesn't identify with doing womanly things or acting in ways in which the standard woman would act. That's fine. But we don't need to be creating new categories. Because once we do that, nothing is going to make sense anymore. And life as we know it in the West is going to be over. So that's some food for your asses.